So today we are going to cover the topic of uncovering Raquel Leviss's attachment style. And if you're not already familiar, there was essentially this big sort of scandal that took place that was covered on like CNN, of all places. And it was essentially these characters from a television show called Vanderpump Rules. And essentially, there were three main characters in the scandal, two really close friends, and a long-term sort of life partner, boyfriend. And essentially, these two were together. It was a female and a male, and the really close friend of both of theirs, it was a mutual friend, ended up having an affair, and it was found out, and it was sort of put all over television, sort of showed up everywhere. I mean, I came to find out about it because it just was all the time recommended to me on my YouTube feed and channel. So eventually, I went down the rabbit hole and started sort of investigating it and going through different podcasts and clips and things that were online. And I found it to be a really interesting topic that we can learn a lot from, particularly in terms of limerence and how that played a huge role, as well as different attachment styles, different attachment dynamics. Now, I just want to say a quick disclaimer, which is that I don't know these people personally, and I want to make that really clear. Like, I really don't know all the things that go on behind closed doors. I didn't watch all the seasons of Vanderpump Rules, so there may be things that I'm missing. This assessment and sort of analysis of the character, we're really going to call it a character because I don't know this person personally. And for all I know, they could be acting for the show. I really don't have any idea. But we'll call it this character. I thought there were some really interesting dynamics that showed up in terms of some of my findings, some of the key learnings or takeaways we can come to understand attachment styles around, and also some really powerful lessons that can emerge from this sort of dynamic. So first and foremost, let's cover some of the key topics, and then we'll talk about her attachment style at the end. So first of all, clearly this woman, Raquel, she was the other woman in the dynamic. And I will say for a lot of people who end up being the other woman in a dynamic, there tends to be a subconscious comfort zone first of feeling unworthy of having what they truly want or are looking for. I've often found that people who end up being the other person, in the relationship dynamic, they're sort of like the side person, that they are often either dealing with deep childhood wounds where they felt neglected, unseen, like they didn't matter, and or they feel this great sense of unworthiness and have a difficult time taking up space and feeling like they can really deserve everything that they would look for in a relationship, somebody's undivided attention. Now, this is not going to be a video about me like justifying this person's actions. Of course, it's a horrible, horrible thing to cheat or be, in a relationship dynamic where you betray a close friend. And from that space, you're hooking up or having an affair with your good friend's partner. Like that's a really unhealthy situation, of course. But I don't think that this should be a space that we like judge and shame and criticize people. I think it should be a space that we kind of unpack it, take an honest look at what's going on, work to more deeply understand it and some of the pain points and challenges, as well as discover some of the different attachment style dynamics. Because at the end of the day, this person and all of them in the dynamic are human beings going through their own pain points, patterns, challenges, core wounds, different imprints, attachment traumas. And obviously, they're all kind of showing up within the little love triangle that was sort of formed. So, I'm not here saying good for her. It's justified that she was the other woman because she probably has trauma. Of course, there's not a justification for doing things that really hurt other people. But it's also really helpful to unpack them and more deeply understand them in the process of healing and growing in terms of each of ourselves. So with that being said, obviously there is probably some sort of dynamic. And then it's funny because I was reading more articles about this and thinking, you know what, I'm going to do a YouTube video about this because some of especially the limerence to me just like so stood out. And I started going down the rabbit hole and reading articles and sort of digesting a bunch of different clips from things. And, one other thing that I found is that she was adopted very young. So obviously being adopted can create some really deep abandonment wounds, a lot of deep abandonment fears, a fear of being alone, a difficult time being alone, right? Because what you feel when you're alone is that deep sense of probably unhealed aloneness or loneliness that actually she would have experienced as a child that would have left her with probably pretty tremendous I am alone wounds, even if it was at an age where she couldn't process it or understand it, even with words and language. It doesn't mean that it wouldn't have really substantially imprinted her subconscious mind and she wouldn't still be feeling it as an adult. And part of emotional literacy is to put our feelings into words, right? But when we don't have that, we can just go through all these feelings and they just make us react to things. Now, some other really important key factors that stood out to me was how much of a people pleaser Raquel seemed to be, especially in like past clips that I had seen online. And then also, it seemed as though she really didn't know who she was. She was kind of defining her sense of self through her friendships and relationships externally rather than, and even things like, standing up for herself and, you know, saying kind of mean things back to other people that I saw in clips. And it was like, it was funny because it seemed as though she was standing up for herself and saying mean things to other people in their sort of friend group, essentially from a place of trying to impress her friends rather than from a place of like that was what she truly wanted to say or truly needed. And it was obviously from this place of like spitefulness or anger rather than just like healthy assertiveness, where if somebody says something you don't like, you just say, hey, that's not okay. Like, it's unacceptable to speak to me that way. And, I'm not going to engage with you in a conversation if you're going to speak like this. Right. So, like, that's assertiveness where we don't have to raise our voice or be harsh with our words. We can just be really clear with our boundaries and really strong in how we assert and communicate those boundaries using our language. And, obviously she was sort of going in a different direction. And it seemed like it actually had this thread of people pleasing within it. And some other big pieces where it seemed as though she sort of put the relationship to Tom above everything else, right? Like it was like center of her universe. She was willing to go through all of these things just to sort of make that relationship dynamic work. A willingness, obviously, on some level, even just subconsciously, to betray her friendships, right? To do things that were risky, or especially like, in reality, if she's being filmed on live television and there's this so many layers and complexities to this dynamic. So, willing to risk a lot just to get this person, Tom's, attention. And then on top of that, obviously there was a lot of codependency, right? So as I mentioned, some of the poor boundaries, some of the, seeming to not really know who she was in an individuated way from the inside out. Like I saw a clip of her having this sort of panic attack in a car. And she was sort of saying, like, I don't know who I am. I can't find myself. I feel this sense of like emptiness. I'm not sure of her exact words, but it was along those lines essentially. And then, of course, we have the limerence piece. And when somebody is limerent, it's usually because somebody comes along that really deeply meets their very deeply unmet needs. And as a result of that, as a result of like somebody coming in and having their needs poured into, it almost creates a sense of like, oh my goodness, I'm hungering for these needs for so long. I'm starving for them. You are the food that I'm starving for. And people can become irrational, illogical, do things that are really against their character or moral compass in this type of case. And again, this is not me saying this is a justification or okay. It's a horrid thing to, hurt somebody so much, especially a dear friend of yours, and to just really not have much like empathy or remorse for, the situation and the positions you're, co-creating, putting other people in. But, I definitely saw a lot of these different dynamics at play. And it really speaks to the importance of us having a stable, individuated sense of self. Because when we have an individuated sense of self, we feel much more worthy of what we want. We're clear on what we want and what's okay with us, not okay with us. We have better boundaries. It really takes a certain degree of boundarylessness, in my opinion, if you're somebody who wants a monogamous relationship and then will be on the outside, will be the other woman in the relationship or other man in the relationship, depending on the experience. But it takes a certain degree of like being so okay with breadcrumbs because you're going to be getting those breadcrumbs to a certain degree if you're the third person in that dynamic. And of course, there's like a strong exception to people who may be in poly relationships or things of that nature. But just notice that people in a poly relationship, for example, are coming from a place of choosing that, right? That's intentional the whole time. Whereas in this case, I very much understood it as though Raquel was looking for a monogamous, committed relationship and wanted that, and then was sort of allowing for much less, was putting up with the breadcrumbs and, sort of settling with that to a certain degree. So, after conducting many polls and surveys at the Personal Development School over the past few years, we have found that students come in and 92% of them become dominantly securely attached within 90 days if they focus on 6 crucial areas. These 6 crucial areas have to do with what it takes to become secure according to Gibson integrated attachment theory. And this is to tackle core wounds, learn your needs, learn to emotionally regulate, develop boundaries, communicate better, and update old behavioral coping mechanisms. Now, we have these roadmaps and course tracks laid out for you on the other side of when you join. So everything is simple and in front of you to help you take exactly the steps that you need to master your love life, create thriving relationships, and really see the results in your healing journey so you can let go of old wounds, old baggage, and truly leave it behind. And on top of that, included in this 30% off promotion for life, you also gain access to our daily live events, webinars. I'll be there 3 days a week to answer any questions that you have in your journey. And we have amazing certified integrated attachment theory experts who are there to support you with their daily live events and webinars Monday through Saturday. And this is a great opportunity to connect with like-minded people, to get your questions answered, and receive any extra bonus support that you need. And last but not least, we even have social events on a daily basis. So you can practice through a sharing circle, being a little bit more vulnerable, connecting with other like-minded people. You can practice through communication scripts, having tough conversations, and really modeling that out. And there are so many other supportive events that are there for you on your journey. So I would love for you to join and take this opportunity. I would love for you to be part of this challenge to become securely attached within that 90-day period. And I can't wait to see you on the other side. So, we tend to see these dynamics at play. And I think that overall, it seems as though she's very anxiously attached because she's got a lot of defining herself through her external relationships, codependency, poor boundaries, a lot of people-pleasing dynamics, a lot of limerence. And generally, as you move along the attachment continuum, if you imagine it going, it doesn't quite work like this, but if you imagine going dismissive, avoidant over here, fearful, avoidant, anxious, preoccupied, generally as you move more anxious, you're going to have somebody who tends to experience more limerence in relationships because they're deeply disconnected from their needs and their capacity and ability to meet their own needs. Hence why they're likely going to be much more interested in somebody meeting their needs from the outside, and they will really chase after that person or allow themselves to really forego, their own sense of like moral compass or what's okay with them or not okay with them if they're in really strong limerence, because it's almost like a starvation mode. And limerence can actually affect the brain in a similar way that a drug can, in terms of the neurochemistry and the sort of neurochemical cocktail that gets produced. And so we can see a lot more likelihood of these types of limerence dynamics to exist. It does not mean that all anxious preoccupieds by any means are, the other woman in relationships or the other man in relationships, but it just means that they're more likely to experience limerence, which can be more destabilizing, right? And from that destabilizing place, of course, one of the potential side effects, if you will, of that could be to make justifications or sort of rationalize things that otherwise may not be healthy. So I think that it's important to sort of dig into this to more deeply understand what somebody's attachment style may be. I also think that, I want to just keep in mind that I don't know this person personally, nor do I understand all of their different dynamics and what happens behind closed doors. But I'm hoping that you can use this video today as a bit of a case study and understanding of, what different attachment patterns may look like and some of the painful consequences of, not healing our attachment style and doing the inner work, because it can allow our subconscious mind and that woundedness and trauma to actually make us invest in sort of compromising situations at times, and obviously then be more likely to lead to painful outcomes. So with all of that being said, if you want to do a much deeper dive into the personal development school itself and check out some of our courses, you can check out the Overcoming Codependency and Enmeshment course for 7 days for free. That's all about reprogramming codependency. It includes a lot of different dynamics around boundaries. And you can also check out our anxious attachment style reprogramming course if you relate to any of these different pain points or challenges. I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you so much for being here and for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe if you're enjoying this channel. And I will see you in the next video.